Welcome to our webinar, everyone. Today we have Jeff Pergalski from Inovia Consulting, and he will be presenting to us on Microsoft Dynamics NAV 2018, What's New. And I just want to let you know that we do record our webinars, so this will be available on our website later this week for you to view again, or if you'd like to share it with any of your colleagues, you're more than welcome to. And also, if you have any questions, we do encourage you to type them into the questions box, and we will get them called out and answered for you at the end of our webinar. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, and he will begin our presentation.
All right, thanks Angie, and thanks everyone for attending today. Usually we do these about 10 a.m. Central Time, so I don't mind the 1 p.m. afternoon time, although we are pushing up to that 2 o'clock time when people crash, so I will try to keep it quick and enlightening and hopefully get you out before you start snoozing. So a little bit about me. That's me on the screen. I have been with Inovia/ABC for almost 10 years. And I come from the networking side, so the technical aspect of Dynamics NAV is what appeals to me equally as much as the business side of things. And so sometimes I need to be roped back in. If I start talking in tech speak too much, type to Angie and she'll set me straight. I've got a housekeeping issue myself. There's a picture there of my my 9-month-old pug puppy Simone. Working from a home office, sometimes there might be a little bit of background noise. I do my best to tire her out before presentations, but if you hear any barking in the background, it's not me. She is the reason. So let's get right into it. Dynamics NAV 2018. There is, I guess I should clarify for those of you on the call who are evaluating 2018, as it compares to your current version, this may not be completely valuable to you because what I'm focusing on is just the stuff that is brand new to 2018, as opposed to NAV 2017. If you are coming from an older version, then all of this stuff is going to be new, and there is a lot of stuff that I'm not going to cover in terms of what the application and how it differs from your version of NAV. But I think it's important because there has been a conversation in the channel in the ERP space about what Microsoft's plans are for NAV, how it relates to Dynamics 365, and do we have to worry as a NAV partner at Inovia? Do you have to worry as a NAV end user? What is the future? And certainly Microsoft has made us all feel better by reassuring that NAV as an on-premise ERP application is going to be available for the next several years, along with at the point that it no longer becomes available in that version, there are going to be paths to get people to the hosted version if that's what our only version is going to be. Not saying that's what it is, but the Dynamics 365 cloud application is going to be identical to NAV from a code base perspective within about the next month. And so having that same functionality and having the flexibility of deciding the next time you look at reevaluating your infrastructure needs, your hosting solution, or the application itself, what makes the most sense for your organization. NAV 2018 is the most versatile, flexible version that Microsoft has released. Obviously, every time they retool the product, they add to it, and certainly the flexibility is an important part of the application and adds to its value for you, the end user. I'm just going to have, this is not what the application looks like. Actually, we are going to get into NAV 2018 for just a little bit. I've got quite the slide deck because showing features, especially as it relates to an ERP system, takes a little bit more time than just clicking through and and confusing people as to showing the functionality. So our thoughts are that we would whet your appetite with this what's new solution, and then get you to and then get some subsequent slides or subsequent presentations where we dive into those functional areas that I'm going to discuss today, and maybe show you a little bit in terms of what's available. And the final part of my presentation, we're just going to I've just got a slide that lets you know what your options are as an end user in terms of evaluating the 2018 product. We've always have a lot of questions about that, and how do we evaluate what our data looks like on the new version without spending a lot of money. And so I've got some ideas there as well. So again, this is the Dynamics 365 roadmap. If you see, there is on the bottom here the on-premise versions. 2018 is where we are, released fall 2017. I guess December 1st was still fall. So we've had our hands on it now for about 3 months, and have actually had our first couple implementations go live. No complaints. Everyone is loving it. We've got Spring Dynamics NAV 2018 R2. That will be at this point of release where Dynamics 365 and Dynamics NAV are going to be the exact same code base, so no limitations to the 365 product. There is, however, a substantial difference in how you can access the applications, if it's a hosted environment or if it's running on-prem. So that is an important consideration, and we'll speak to that briefly as we get through this presentation. And then finally, I guess, ongoing Dynamics 365 for and the different options: Dynamics 365 for sales, Dynamics 365 for operations, or Dynamics NAV, which is Dynamics 365 for financials. So there is going to be an on-premise edition of Dynamics 365, and that's important for everyone who isn't comfortable with pushing this stuff out to the cloud or making it someone else's responsibility and problem. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the setup and extensions. And basically, the customer benefits are pretty straightforward. There's a single place for settings, so the setup and extensions page. For people that are working in it, especially partners, but not only partners, because I think Microsoft, one of the trends that I've noticed over the last several years is that they are making the application more hands-on for end users. Clearly, that comes at the request of end users who don't want to constantly pay a partner to make tweaks to their system. So it's I don't think we are going to hear any complaints about that, but that is that's an important thing to consider, I guess, as you understand changes in the 2018 product. Having this setup and extensions page puts everything in one area. The assisted setup, so things that are repetitive in nature, and that you're going to set up posting groups, you're going to set up customers, vendors. Having the assisted setup, almost the equivalent of, for those of you who like to do your own taxes, if you go through the Intuit product line, TurboTax or TaxAct, or any of them, where they're asking you questions about, did you buy a home? Did you pay college tuition? Did you relocate for a job? The assisted setup is going to help with wizards that are going to guide you through the process. And obviously that comes from the Dynamics 365 space, where sort of people are self-provisioning, and a lot of people that are attracted to the 365 product are attracted to it because it's a lot easier. I think we would still say, if any of our consultants or any other NAV consultant that you talk to, I don't think there's too many of them that would say that they believe NAV is is a good candidate for self-deployed. For someone who doesn't have any experience with NAV to deploy it, it's a pretty big, complicated application, obviously, because it's so powerful. So no one's saying that you don't need a partner, but certainly Microsoft is putting the tools in place in 2018 to let you do a lot of this work yourself. Manual setup is still an option, but showing the lists and filtering, it's just really improved. It's another step past the rapid start tools that have been available for the last several versions, and really putting a lot of the power in the end user's hands, as well as making things easier for partners who are helping implement the solution. And then finally, service connections and add-ons. So OCR, SMTP, or email, the currency exchange, and then CRM tying into other products. All of that can be managed from the single point on the page. And we'll just get here to the setup and extensions page. This is what it looks like. We are things that setting your company settings, region codes, currencies, language, all these big picture items, those are all available in a single location, and you've got the ability to really make changes easily, and that is something later on we'll get to in terms of just simple things that you don't run into every day, but have become really problematic in certain situations, like, let's say, changing the name of your company because of how many records it touches in the database. We've had customers, we'll just make this change and then apply it, and then their system blows up and we're having to help them recover data. And so from that standpoint, they've really made improvements in the application. And again, setup and extensions is just one area where it shows very clearly Microsoft's desire to make this a more end-user friendly application. Something else that is new in 2018 from the application side is user tasks. So there's a user task setup. It can be, these tasks can be pending on tasks, or on task queues on the role center. And there's a little bit of utility built around those. So essentially what we're looking at here is a role center, the business manager role center specifically, but in there we can configure tasks that need to be done. If you look, you can see my user tasks there as 0 pending right now for this user, but we can define those tasks based on a number of things, similar to what I guess taking the notifications in the system that have been around for several versions, taking that a step further and actually creating a task. And so a task could be, in this case, we've got a verify vendor task that is defined. When you are creating the new user task, you can associate it with a page, a report, a list view, and so it could be something like, all right, anytime a new you create, let's say you create a new as a customer service rep, you take a call from a customer or a prospect. You want that customer or prospect, someone to follow up with them after your phone call with them. If there are a number of ways to do that in NAV, obviously you could use workflows, you could use Microsoft Flow, but you could also just do something as simple and basic as assigning a task to either verify customer information, verify vendor information, and assign that to a user. And then that task is something that lives in the system, is attached to the appropriate customer card, vendor card, contact card, and you can use that to monitor progress in the system. And I think really the idea behind it is to keep people in the system. I mean, that was the feedback that that Microsoft got from end users, that we lose efficiency when we hop in and out of the application. So let's do as much as we can within the application, creating these user tasks. That people that have asked, can these user tasks, can you assign a user task to a group of people, like the CSR group, or multiple, just pick, and unfortunately at this point you can't. This is the first iteration of user tasks, and Microsoft typically improves upon them dramatically in the second and third iterations. All people have to remember is the OCR functionality that was added in 2016, and the fact that it only brought in header information for those accounts payable invoices, without any line level detail, and people kind of groaned and said, what is the point? And then 2017 came around, and boom, it was all there with the line. So user tasks, they're going to obviously add to this functionality down the road, but it's an important little piece of the puzzle that was missing in earlier versions and is present now in 2018. Another new area, employee ledger entries. So obviously paving the way for expense reporting within NAV. But these employee journal entries, or these employee ledger entries, can be are fully supported in journals, just like your anything else, your vendors. In the past, what customers or what end users did for a workaround, if they didn't have a full expense reporting solution and they had expenses associated with employees where the employees needed to be reimbursed, is they set the employees up as a vendor, which led to some reporting issues and an occasional hiccup with audit and compliance. But now with employee ledger entries, you don't have to do that anymore. You're able to just create an employee and assign ledger entries. You can decide if you want to use balancing accounts or a separate total line in the journal. The only limitation is that local currency is all that's supported. So if you have international employees, the local currency is going to default. You're not able to make those transactions in a foreign currency at this time. There again, you have the ability, just like you do with vendors, to define posting groups for these employees. So you can define a default, and you can mix them up as needed, and then that will allow you to make payments to the employee in the payment journal, and even the apply payments to open employee entries is covered by the payment suggestion functionality, just like it is with vendors. So if you've got an employee that has three expenses pending, and you open that journal and you hit this payment suggestions, it is going to tell you exactly, and you can handle it as efficiently as you do the vendor payments using that payment suggestion functionality. So the employee ledger entry, again, this journal looks the same as it looks for the last three versions, I dare say, that back to 2015. But you can now, and the account type is an employee as the type, and then it pulls up your employee list. No different than if it were a vendor and you were issuing a payment. So posting groups down here defined, the employee expense posting group here, and manual application, not using any suggestions and any bank account information, but that full payment journal support along with payment suggestions is now available for employees. So there will be some accounting folks that are pretty happy to hear that. And something that appeals to the technical geek in me is the new image analyzer. Again, this is part of the functionality that is related to Office 365, but baked into the code of NAV, in that it doesn't cost you anything to use. Essentially what the benefits are, so it affects the system in two different places, contact persons and items. And contact persons, only if you have pictures of these people, which admittedly not everyone does, but pictures are becoming, I think, more ubiquitous, that they're showing up everywhere. So a lot of times people are attaching them on V cards through Outlook. And so if you have a picture of a person and you attach it to their contact card with the image analyzer turned on, it will look at, it's actually the computer vision API that's for Microsoft Cognitive Services is the actual application that's running in the background. But as you add a person or an item, it will look at, in terms of person, it will look at their age and gender and make a suggestion if you are using relationship management in NAV, which everyone should. It will start to build some customer segments for you. If you want to know, age-wise, you're looking at how many of my customers are over 40, over 20, and start those age range. Just importing it with the image analyzer on will start to create some attributes. And then certainly on the item side, I think it's even more valuable and more intriguing for end users, because you can, with the image analyzer on, have pictures of your product, and the Cognitive Services API will start to figure out type, color, and then suggest attribute-based tags on based on what it sees. So again, here's an item card. We've just attached a picture of a table here, and we've got image attributes turned on. I know that because image attributes did not come out until, I believe, 2017 was the first version. So attributes, different than dimensions and used differently in the system, but in this case, we've got some things like color, depth, width, the image, or the type. So bringing this in using image analyzer, it's going to start to give some reports and actually give you a confidence score based on what it sees. So it knows, based on just the vast amount of photos that are in the Microsoft Cognitive Services APIs it has to compare to, that image that was posted is a table. It looks like it's indoor, and it is furniture. So these are the suggested attributes that it's bringing up, and we can choose to the fact that it is a table. What are we going to use? We're going to use that as the category, and in the details we can define it as, okay, anything that you bring in as a table, as file, please associate the table category or the table attribute to that item, and it's going to do it automatically, no rekeying or keying of additional information. The fact that it is an indoor piece of furniture, we're just going to assign that attribute. And then the fact that it is a piece of furniture, we're telling it to ignore that, because maybe we are a furniture company, and 99.9% of everything we sell is furniture, so we're just going to ignore that. But again, it gives you a confidence score here. The more of your items, the more of your SKUs that you import pictures of, the better the Cognitive Services API gets, and the more accurate it is. So especially beneficial if you are going to import a lot of items, like you're going through an upgrade, and it's like, hey, we want to start using attributes. We have thought about it. We're going to define our attributes in the attribute table, and then the image analyzer will reference that information as it brings in items, and you can batch handle all of these things and create actually a lot of value within your database in terms of adding these attributes to products and SKUs that didn't have them before, so that you get better insight as you're starting to use some of the other tools, the reporting tools that are built into Base Nav, things like Power BI, eventually the Cortana-based simple language search. So, show me all of the red chairs in my inventory, and using attributes in the 2018 version of the product with Image Analyzer, all that stuff will just happen automatically. So another piece for customers that are using the Dynamics 365 for sales, or what used to be referred to as Dynamics CRM from Microsoft. Big changes there in terms of assisted setup, improved synchronization, from a productivity standpoint, a lot of nitpicky details when creating sales or purchase documents, having default salespeople associated, and that logic coming from NAV through the connector, the built-in connector, is important. That's been asked for since that integration was created, I guess, back in the 2016 product. There's a lot of a lot of improvements in terms of just the back and forth. So what Microsoft labels as efficiency here, but sales orders from Dynamics 365 with write-in products being able to transfer. So you've got depending on what your line of business is, you might be in a industry where the products that you're talking about, that your sales people are talking about with customers, aren't ones that exist in your existing inventory. So you're going to do a write-in SKU, or you're going to do something different and customize whatever it is that you're selling them. Being able to create a quote-unquote write-in product and then have that information transferred into Dynamics 365 or into NAV is pretty cool for a lot of businesses that run in that way. So you can actually now open the integration synchronization job window and check progress. Just tweaks to the system that you couldn't do before, and that really sort of meant that most of the time when you were integrating with Dynamics CRM or Dynamics 365 for sales, you were forced to have a third-party help with some extra integration that took it beyond what the Microsoft base integration was. And I think that's, again, speaks to the fact that Microsoft is making this a more end-user friendly application. Being able to map things like the name field being transferred to the external document number field on sales orders, long product and sales order line descriptions from Dynamics 365 for sales are no longer cut short, but are transferred fully to the NAV. So it's just all in all a much better integration, much more powerful and thus more efficient. Very easy to configure. You only need a couple bits of data in terms of the OData feed and an account with permissions. So it's very easy to do. And hopefully for customers who see value in that Dynamics 365 for sales, giving them the ability to have a much tighter integration and not have to spend as much money with third-party solutions to make that happen. Okay, another syncing vendors to OCR. So the OCR service, as I said earlier, has been around since 2016. It's made great strides, and so the next step that it's making is the ability to sync vendor information using OCR, not just the invoices that they're sending, but the actual vendors themselves being able to use some automation in the OCR service to accomplish that, as well as having improved results for the OCR quality. So Lexmark or Kofax, they're better able to, Lexmark ICS can use the vendor names to better detect an invoice from a vendor the first time. There's not so much guessing, and always having at least the first time to enter in the vendor information, and then hope that the next time you do it, it catches it. Whenever there is a vendor change that the Lexmark Kofax ICS, it triggers that, and then basically you enable the synchronization to happen. It doesn't happen out of the box that way, but but once you have it enabled, you can resync master data. And if you've made changes to the information in NAV, you can have that information synced to the OCR service, and you can very easily from the OCR setup service card look at the when the last sync was, and again, if you've got vendors that you need to do this with frequently, and some that are you never have to do it on, it is you decide how often you want to do it, so it's not like it's asking every time to resync master data. Here is a Kofax vendor data information. So the supplier number that's associated with these different vendors in your system, city, street. You can do tax registration, but being able to have that synchronized master data and not just the invoices that these vendors are sending you is another step in the direction of improved productivity. And of course, much more. So these are additional improvements highlighted by Microsoft in some of their literature. And again, this is from an application end user perspective, mostly from the business side of things, but being able to split and distribute item charges, not just by quantity or weight, but also by volume and weight, because sometimes that is how you are being charged for shipping. It's not just how much the box weighs, but dimensionally, how much volume does it take up. That is, so being able to split item charges that way, that's new to 2018. Direct transfer orders, so you no longer have to use an in-transit location for people who have warehousing. That's helpful. Something else that's sort of that customer service reps will potentially love, and the accounting team may love or hate, but being able to update master data information for customers and vendors straight from the document itself. So you are creating a sales order, and you have information either that came in while you're on the phone with the customer or via email that says, hey, we've just FYI, we've updated our office, we've moved, and this is the new invoicing location, and this is the new physical location. You don't have to, oh, wait a minute, stop what you're doing, go back to the vendor card and make a change, and then refresh and hope you didn't lose where you were, forget what you were doing. You can now just make those changes, and it will ask you, do you want to keep this setting for this customer, this address, this new information? Absolutely, and check a box and be on your way. There's improved search results. The intercompany automation is now put in place between the intercompany outbox and inbox. You can tell it how often you want to sync, and it's not a completely manual process anymore. Bulk invoicing, so when you are sending, printing, emailing, invoicing, being able to grab all appropriate invoices at the same time is an efficiency gain for people who are doing that. This posting groups and suggesting which accounts based on information that's already in your system is something that is kind of neat. Again, these sort of cognitive services APIs that are starting to tell the system what's going on, and in the hopes that the system will recognize and help make you more efficient as it makes these suggestions of accounts. Finally, the ability to show details on the general ledger register report. So, rather than, when you've got these ginormous general ledger register reports, not being able to see detail in the description lines is something that, without having to pay your partner to add that or dig in there yourself and try to figure out a workaround, but just having the ability, yes, we want to see details, click that box and be on your way. There's a bunch of new reports added, just stock reports. So the odds that you're going to need your customer reports to be moved forward if you're upgrading is reduced because there are more reports. Check printing, 3 checks per page. built in. I mean, pretty much everyone I know has a custom form for their checks because everyone wants their checks printed differently. But that's neat. And then payroll import for QuickBooks. If you were using QuickBooks payroll, maybe you're using QuickBooks for the whole solution, but you're getting off of that on the ERP side. You don't want to leave them for payroll. There's a connector in there that will take care of that out of the box. So next, we've got Microsoft Flow and Flow embedded right in the in NAV application. So for anyone who has, I presented a couple months ago on Microsoft Flow. I'm going to be presenting again for one of the NAVUG chapters next month on Flow. Really cool. I encourage you, if you are not familiar with Microsoft Flow, one of my 2 suggestions leaving here, leaving this webinar, number 1 is to go find a way to check out NAV 2018 and figure out sort of how your company can benefit from it. And number 2 is figure out how to use Microsoft Flow. For those that don't know, Microsoft Flow is a really basic, essentially almost just a 2-step programming application where if this then that, that IFTTT, no, ITTT. So if this then that, so something happens in your system and you want, because of that thing happening, you want something else to happen. Microsoft Flow has been around for 2 years now, has worked with NAV almost the whole time it's been around. Also works with applications like Twitter and Facebook. And so use cases where we've seen this is that if you have a Twitter feed and your Twitter feed is monitoring your company's Twitter handle, or maybe you define anytime someone, let's say you are in the donut business, and every time someone tweets with and uses a hashtag of donuts, you want that to be entered into your system for follow-up. Microsoft Flow can do that because it brings apart these different applications, and so if there's a tweet with this hashtag, alert someone on my team. If if it can also come from NAV and go outside. So the example I gave of something from an external application like Twitter, and then having that create something in NAV like a user task to follow up or to evaluate, is this a positive, is this a negative interaction? You can also put things in the other direction. So if something happens in NAV, let's say you don't have workflows configured, and again, there's always multiple ways to do any of these things that I'm talking about, but Microsoft is essentially empowering you to use newer, more, trying to think of what the word is I'm looking for, but more straightforward tools for you to accomplish the same thing without the complexity of maybe turning on workflows within NAV, which are far more powerful. But so you could create a Microsoft Flow that once a customer service rep raised a credit limit for a customer, that sends an email out to that person's supervisor, or maybe it sends an email out to the CFO or to the accounting team to just verify that that is something that's allowed. I mean, obviously, you can control that through permissions and through security in NAV so that they can't have the ability to make any changes. But let's say you want to relax those restrictions a little bit, because you find that if your CSRs have a little bit of flexibility with a customer on the phone, that sometimes they can land those big orders instead of telling the customer they have to get back to them once they've talked to their supervisor for approval. Being able to use Microsoft Flow in this way to automate those processes, so you don't have to rely on the CSR whose phone is ringing off the hook to make these changes and alert people to the changes that have been made. it happens automatically. So Microsoft Flow is now built into the product. That's how committed Microsoft is, and that's why I think it's important that everyone get their head around this. If you have Office 365, you have access to flows. The flows can be managed. So in this case, there's a notification. The flow that we use in the example here is send a notification when a new customer is created. So this notification is going to be a NAV notification, and you can decide who gets what notification. If you can have multiple flows set up, multiple flows could, essentially flows are the building block of workflows. You could have a flow that starts with creating a notification, but then that notification could be the first step in another flow that does something else. So you could connect these things if you were so inclined. But basically the idea is to get the most out of your system and to automate processes where it's appropriate so that your users have the right information in front of them at all times. Power BI reporting, anyone, again, that would probably be the third thing on my list. If you haven't checked out Power BI, start to wrap your head around what that is like. There's a new Power BI reporting control, so it's got all the interactions that you need in terms of pulling together your data along with potentially infinite number of other data streams. Big data comparing sales numbers for your industry in markets that you are in or not in, and all of this stuff is done with a few clicks within the application. And the thing that is really neat is that in the 2017 version, there were some role centers where you could put Power BI reporting and you could link multiple reports. Now Power BI is an option in all kinds of different areas. So on customers, if you want to have this is a Power BI report that's comparing sales activity by quarter with all the easy visualizations and powerful visualizations in the Power BI reporting toolbox now shows up with customers. And again, you can park it on a fact box so that as you are scrolling through your list, these things jump out at you. So it can be customers, it can be items, and it is so here looking at sales and purchase activity on an item. So item cards is now something that Power BI reporting can exist on, and as well as customers, vendors, etc. And again, the connection information is there in the ribbon for people with appropriate permissions. Clicking on that brings you to the connector setup, and again, you can use the URL, what sort of authentication you need, which company you're authenticating to. You generate the web service access key, which is something that's very easy to do. You do that once, copy paste it in here, and you are in business. And then once you start to set up that connector, you can see all these Microsoft solutions here that you can connect to, but there's way more than just the Microsoft connections in terms of what your Power BI reporting options are. So that is another really cool feature. Something else that is cool, and that was something that was hugely important for a lot of our customers in the 2017 product, was the Outlook integration. At one point in 2015 and in 2016, when Microsoft removed, if you remember, prior to that, there was an Outlook page part on the Role Center and the Role Tailor client. You could see the preview of your calendar and your email, so you could have a sense of what was going on. You clicked on something and it would open up that email. Turns out that customers who live in Outlook prefer Outlook to NAV, and they didn't want to just see a scaled down version of their Outlook within the NAV window. They wanted to see they wanted to be able to see their do just the opposite and see NAV information within Outlook and not a scaled down version. So essentially that's what the 2017 product offered, was the ability to look up and reference customers based on email address that exist on contact cards within NAV. If you get an email from a person whose email exists on there, it will pull up all relevant information through the Contact Insights Outlook add-in. And you see in this example here, the message is that they want to get some information from your company, and so the part of this that is new for 2018 is that you have the ability now to document this email within the relationship management portion of NAV without having to do anything extra. So the content that you are typing in your mail, you can create in this window. You're not leaving Outlook. This is just another pane within your Outlook application. But then having all of that information, I mean, can you imagine how powerful that is? Is it powerful enough to ask your sales employees to constantly, double enter stuff? Well, in the grand scheme of things, it probably is that important, but salespeople don't want to spend all their time doing this. So the fact that these now in the 2018 version of the product, these interactions are captured so that and everyone in your company can then see, like, hey, the last time that we got an email from Andy, this is what he said, and we're not asking like to see someone's email or to forward that email. The interaction is logged and is captured within NAV, and so everyone who wants to can go in and see that. I think that's a huge advancement. And another thing that people are really excited about is the pre-configured Excel reports. So in the past, we would generate these reports, and then maybe we'd say we'd dump to Excel, or we'd generate just the PDF, and we'd copy all that information and then try to paste it into a single Excel workbook. Usually that took a lot of massaging of the fields, so things worked out. Now there's already there's already a handful: balance sheet, income statement, cash flow statement, return to earnings, trial balance, all the big ones. They already exist as an Excel report. So that is certainly a nice little tweak to the application that people will appreciate, because so many people are much more comfortable pushing the numbers around in a report if they're doing it in an Excel workbook, as opposed to trying to copy them out of a PDF and dumping them into something that's more flexible like Excel. As long as we're talking about Excel, editing in Excel for journal pages, that's a huge advantage. So being able to just about every journal page can be edited in Excel. So you set the format correctly, and then actually push data in. You could always export to Excel, and that's functionality has been around forever. But having the ability to create a spreadsheet or to export your numbers, let's say it's budget related, you export that and then take that information that even if it's just a blank workbook, enter in all the relevant information, and then suck it back into NAV through a journal. Whether it's 1,000 lines of information or if it's only 3 or 4, but that can be a huge time saver. Again, this is pretty basic sheet that shows the way that you can manipulate that through the Microsoft Dynamics Office Excel add-in. So there's got to be a trust associated between the two applications, but if you're living in Office 365, that is there inherently anyway, so that makes it very easy. And I'd say that's sort of the major ideas between, from the functionality standpoint, what's brand new to 2018. In terms of things like session refresh for people who are logging in and out of the system, that's an important thing. A lot of people don't, you don't have to constantly log in again. You can change companies without restarting the client or having to log in again. that's nice for people who have a bunch of different companies that they're hopping in and out of all the time. The company display name change, obviously that used to be a deal killer. You just wouldn't change the name of your company within NAV at the risk of upsetting your accountants, because it was just too cumbersome, because it touched a large number of URLs and the company table. That's a big thing to change. So now that being able to dynamically do that is a step in the right direction. The report previewer, so not having to generate or wait for these reports to generate, but being able to watch the preview come in a browser before you're doing it, and having that embedded. You don't necessarily need to have it embedded in the client. You don't have to download and install the viewer apps anymore. And then there's a toolbar that lets you interact with the report before you decide what you want to do with its final version. And that can include text and hyperlinks, etc. So there's for any coders on the call, a bunch of new PowerShell commandlets for the server start and stop. I'm not going to get too deep into any of this stuff, but dynamically changing of service properties as this application has been made more flexible to exist in the cloud. They've made changes to it. I think an important thing to consider is when we talk about the upgrade, some of these things, the schema synchronization, and extensions, costly uninstall, reinstall, all that stuff has been eliminated so that the application has been re-architected to the point where it's really efficient for you as an end user to upgrade when you get to this version. So another cool part is the web client personalization, and just the fact that you can now, because so many more users are going to the web client and not installing the Windows client, being able to tweak the web client in the same way, almost identically as you can tweak the Windows client, adding fields, moving queues, etc. Here's an example where you're switching around what their page looks like. Let's say you want to add tables in the same way, or add a field to a page. All that stuff comes out of the box functionality. So really exciting stuff for people who live in that area, who live with their clients in the web browser. The developer and IT pro stuff, I'm going to click through. So the integration and extensions, whether it's APIs, extensions, or a mix of both, being able to connect 2018 to all these new services is something that's never been easier. From an API perspective, I mean, this is by no means a complete list, but I mean, all this stuff is just built in out of the box. All of these different third-party services, and then in terms of development, so your code people, the tools that they have, whether it's in-app designer or Visual Studio Code, doesn't matter. It all works together, and people love that. The .NET replacement, these are things that the developers, so the developer tool release cycle, obviously that's been ramped up just as the cycle for development for the application itself. And then finally, Docker is Microsoft's solution to sort of package and distribute these tools within containers. And for anyone that wants to learn more, I will point you to the much smarter people in our team, the developers. But essentially, I guess the last thing I wanted to hit here before our time is up in a couple minutes is that the ability to evaluate is, and what are your options there, and that's I think important. So the first option you have is to just straight up request a trial license from your partner. That doesn't do anything in terms of changing your production license, but you are able to contact your partner, get a 2018 trial license, and if you have a virtualized environment and you have room for adding a virtual machine that can run this, absolutely, that's all you need to do. And you are you're good to go from that point. You don't need to spend any money, subscribe to anything. The other options are get an Azure trial, fire up a virtual machine that's got a pre-configured NAV 2018 image on it. Microsoft gives you $200 of free Azure usage to get started and get your feet wet in Azure. That is something that I, as a pre-sales engineer, have done for several of our customers. I'm happy to do it here. So if you're interested in it, get a hold of us, get a hold of your account manager if you are a customer, or just reach out to us. It's really easy and it's really cool to have a completely fully functional NAV 2018 existing on Azure, and you know, to show it to your end users. We configure however many user accounts you need. It's something that's done in a couple hours, and it's really cool. And last but not least, you can sign up for a free trial of Dynamics 365, because in about a month, Dynamics 365 is going to be identical to NAV 2018. And then you don't have to mess with Azure. All you need to do is sign up for that free trial, and you can see what the online version of NAV looks and feels like. So with that, I think we've got just a couple minutes here. Angie, if you want to, I'm going to get my last slide up. I think it's just thank you with my contact information. You said there was a question.
Yes, Jeff. One of the attendees had missed the first few minutes, so he was asking, are you suggesting that now may be the time to move to the cloud?
Yeah, great question, and that is a fully loaded question, because there's a lot of considerations. I think it has never been a better time to move to the cloud, because whether that cloud means the fully hosted Dynamics 365 solution, or it means just moving your existing instance to Azure, those are two different conversations. But I do believe that that the fact that Microsoft has made so many changes to the application that lends itself to existing in the cloud, they're doing that for a reason. And I think, you know, eventually we're not going to have a choice. I don't know if that's 5 years down the road, or 10 years, or 20 years down the road. Eventually, everyone's going to be on the cloud. That's just where the application is going, where all ERP, where just about every software instance is going. But I do think now is a great time to consider it, especially if you're at the point where you've got to reinvest in a lot of new hardware, you know, refresh your infrastructure. If you're looking at spending $40,000 or $50,000, you start to look at how long that can get you to run in the cloud. I think it really makes sense. So thank you for that question.
We do have another
any other
one.
questions, Angie?
Yes, I'm sorry.
All
right. One of the attendees is on the NAV 2013 R2, and they want to know, where can we find what updates have been made since then?
Excellent question. So what you are looking for is a list of added functionality between 2013 R2 and 2018. And I used to have a link that actually didn't go, the link covered all the way from NAV 3.0 through 2016. But that will have to be homework for me, because Microsoft took that link down because they hadn't updated it in the last 2 versions. So I can, that will be homework for me, and I'm happy to prepare that comparison chart and get back to you by tomorrow. So Angie, if you would share that person's information with me, I will do that off the call. And just thank everyone for attending. There's my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me directly, or through Angie and the rest of our team. We appreciate everyone taking the time to learn a little bit about NAV 2018.
All right, I think that's all the questions. So again, thank you everyone for attending, and thank you, Jeff. I'm sure you can go on for a few more hours talking about this topic, but we only have a short time period, and our brains shut off at a certain point. So thank you all again, and we encourage you to visit our website for our future events. We do have a couple of webinars coming up next week. Jenny Hollingsworth will be presenting a webinar on electronic payments in Microsoft Dynamics NAV 2018. And we have Exprologic, who will also be presenting a webinar next week. And they will be talking about deliver complex quotes in seconds with ExpertLogic CPQ. So if you're interested in any of those webinars, or if you would like to attend any of our other webinars that we have on our website, feel free. And we also have our customer conference coming up April 18th and 19th, so we encourage you to register for that. All that information is on our website. So we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar, and hopefully we will meet you at our conference. So thank you again, everyone, and we will see you next time.